So Pierre Eric, thank you so much for joining me. Pretty good weather you've got in Champagne at the moment. It's how's the year and the harvest treated you so far?
Very good. It was quite hot this summer. Like today, we are worldwide famous for our cool climate, but today it's nice and blue. The whole summer was fairly hot. Therefore, we had an end of August harvest, which is quite rare. And it's quite a job because we have to deal with warm grapes. Well, warm for Champagne, so it's not that warm at the end, but it's still a bit warm for us. The idea about that is my grandfather, René Jolly himself, in 80 vintages, in her 80 harvests, the earliest that he started was the 2nd of September. And I actually celebrate my 20th anniversary yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
Of being the winemaker and the owner. 1st of November, thank you. So he started the earliest in 80 years, the 2nd of August. And in 20 years, I already harvested 4 times in August.
Wow. So there's certainly a shift to warmer climates.
Yes.
Do you think it's also a bit to do with different techniques in the vineyard as well, or is it purely to do with a function of climate?
90% climate.
That's a big impact.
We have to harvest quite early because you know that we like a little bit of acidity, and we have to be careful not to have overripe grapes. So we follow the ripeness very closely in July and August in order to have the right level of sugar and acidity in our grapes and wines at the end.
And so how do you think there will be a change in style, or do you think you'll always end up just harvesting earlier?
We changed the date of harvest in order to get the same taste and the same acidity. And so at the end of the day, you shouldn't be able to tell in a tasting, okay, this was a harvest end of August or mid-September or end of September, because we are looking for a style of wine and an acidity level and a flavor content that are always the same.
And do you think, woe be it, there may be a time when your region, well, I think your region first of Champagne being the most southerly, do you think that there'll ever be a time when sparkling wine is no longer an option and you'll be making still table wines?
Well, mainly because England will take over the sparkling wine, Well, if we keep the acidity and the sugar level as it is now, 10 to 11% when we harvest, we should be pretty much all right. But if we tomorrow decide to harvest later or riper, then yes, we could move to reds and whites. But I think we're happy with the bubbles. Again, our big figure is, before COVID stuff, but our figure is about 300 million bottles a year of champagne overall being produced. So it means it's 1 million bottle sold per working day.
That's that's a lot of champagne consumed worldwide, isn't it?
Yes, but it's only 10% of the sparklings, it's only 8 to 10% of the bubbles made in the world. So we have to keep our quality and taste as better as we can for all the brands, small or big.
Yeah. And so you're being in the most southerly region of Champagne, what would you say typifies the style of the Côte de Bar?
Côte de Bar is a long-living wine area. We started 1,000 years ago with all the Cistercians, abbey, and people. We have a very hard clay. You can see me behind me, some of the buildings of the winery, and we use the local stones to build those buildings. So we have very, very hard stones, very different to Reims and Épinay, where it's a very soft chalk that you can dig for kilometers underneath. We had to build stone by stone all the houses and cellars, so it's quite different. and we get very fine and mineral wines, very ripe as well because of the southern region. We are on the same line, the Côte des Bars. If you follow the Côte des Bars southwest, if you follow it for an hour, you leave the Côte des Bars, drive for an hour, and you end up in Chablis. So we have the same very hard, chalky soil than Chablis. So we are also happy with the Chardonnays, even if 92% of Côte des Bars is made with Pinot Noir. So we are a big Pinot Noir maker. And for us, René Jolly, we have increased to 22% our vineyard in Chardonnay, because we tended to have very good results. So we are very happy. In the year 2000, with my father, we decided to plant more Chardonnays. So today, we produce 22% of our vineyard under Chardonnay, over 14 hectares. And so it means we have a Blanc de Blanc bottle, 100% pure Chardonnay, which is quite rare for the Côte des Bars area, because only 4% of my area is made with Chardonnays. And the rest is Pinot Noir. Some of the Pinot Noir can be turned in a short maceration pink, which is our Cuvée Spéciale RJ, or a red wine, a pure red wine that we blend with white wine, because again, we are the only region in France and Europe that are allowed to blend whites and red to produce pinks. So we also have a blended pink, which is called rosé d'assemblage. So we have the two methods, which is also quite rare, because you have to have a nice winery full of vats and presses to be able to produce those two, which we now have. So sometimes we produce a short maceration pink, or a blended pink from the Pinot Noir, or we press the grapes straight on to get a white wine from Pinot Noir, which is called Blanc de Noir.
And do you, with your lees aging in the cellar, what sort of length of time do you leave most of your cuvées on the lees?
After the fermentation, I tend to keep the lees for several months. We do the malolactic fermentation everywhere, okay, in 100% of our wines, because I'm keen on dropping the acidity a bit down and having as many flavors as we can. So I find in the malolactic fermentation a nice way of increasing the details of the flavors that we get, and therefore we keep that on lees. We keep the wines of the year on lees for 4, 6, 8 months, depends on the vats themselves, and then we can still age them in vats or barrels until the blend that is done in February or March. We do a blend of different years and different vats or barrels together with previous years, previous vintages. So we blend 3, 4 vintages together in order to create our own René Jolly taste, to be bottled in May or June.
And then before disgorgement, how long is it in bottle in the cellar?
And then the green bottle, the classic range, will remain on lees in the cellar from 3 to 5 years, 5, 6 years. And then we have the RJ level, which goes from 5 to 10 years. And then we have Edicio that has spent 15 years on lees in the cellar. So it's quite an old champagne now. Yeah. But it's our top of the range, yeah, Edition.
15 years, that's a big...
15 years. I mean, it's not 3 weeks, you know, so it means that for 15 years of my life, I've been walking past those bottles in the cellar before release. So it's part of the history of the house, yes.
So you've now only really tried 5 years worth of Edicio that you have... you've put any input into that, not just because it's not all your input, because some comes back from previous vintages as well.
Yeah, Edicio is quite a rare bottle. It's only a few hundred bottles sold a year, but it's from a tasting point of view, from a flavor point of view, it's the most complicated and the top of the range that we can produce here with many details. A glass of Edicio can last for 15 minutes and it will change, and it's full of flavors. And to get all those flavors, you have to have the right grape varieties, and then you have to have the time on lees or in vats or barrels. But then the years on lees in the cellar that will create 50% of the taste, if not 75. So you can't replace that by anything else. It has to be there, and you can't compare it with anything else, you know. And all that experience comes from quite a long history. I'm the Jolly number 7 to take the business over, but our family, I mean my family, started in the village in Landreville in 1737. That's the first papers that we have. So again, that was a long time ago. It was wine. It was wine at that time, and then we fought 100 years ago to remain in the Champagne area, and we started to add bubbles in our bottles more than 100 years ago. And here we are producing bottles.
That's fantastic. And I mean, probably a silly question because you were always destined to work in the family business, but what would you be doing if you weren't making champagne?
I quite fancy helicopters, so I think helicopter piloting would have been a good challenge for me.
Yeah,
I just love it. I think it's one of the most difficult and the nicest machine that human being have ever created. And I try to fly sometime when I can, but on a rare occasions. But I think I would have liked that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not the safest of machines. Too many moving parts, I think. But if you let's bring it back into the wine world. If you could make wine anywhere else in the world, or what style or grape varieties you'd like to work with, where would that be?
I theoretically have the knowledge to go like anywhere because I spent 5 years in the technical school. But from a know-how, I think I would have to stick to a cool region. I wouldn't know. There are things that we don't know how to do here, you know, like very strong red wines or sweet wines or
acidify.
Yeah, there are things that we don't really know to do here. So I think from a knowledge point of view or a know-how point of view, I would stick to cool climate. Yeah.
And grape varieties, stick with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, or any other grape varieties you fancy?
You know that Elliot, I did a vintage in the UK, so we had some funny, we had some funny German style grape varieties.
Yeah.
Schönberger and Seyval Blanc and and stuff like that. But no, the grape variety doesn't really matter. I think if you know what you want to do, and I could go to I think New Zealand would sounds nice. You know, I went there a long time ago, and cool climate, grape varieties that we know. Rugby.
So it'd be more of a style thing rather than a grape variety thing.
Yeah, and the region, obviously.
Yeah. So saying that, where's if New Zealand would be somewhere to go and make wine? Where's your favorite place that you've drunk your own wine around the world?
Well, our main market, our first customer is Japan.
Okay.
And there are some bars and restaurants there with few stars, you know, 2 or 3 stars. I've been really lucky to go in very nice places over there, and yes, I have many stories there where people where I could enjoy a glass of René Jolly there.
I guess nice champagne opens a lot of doors.
Yes. So once an old Japanese woman told me she said to me that, don't you feel a bit sad to live in a very small village in a small countryside part of France, you know, where there's nothing, not much. And I said to her, yes, maybe. We are in a small village in the countryside, in the French countryside. But on the other hand, with my little bubbles, I've been able to travel most of the world, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's takes you places.
Yeah.
So what would you pair? I mean, food pairing and champagne. Would you? Well, let's say, would you ever food pair champagne, and would that be your go-to, or would you always say it's a nice celebratory something to drink on its own, or would you therefore pair with Japanese food, or is that something that's?
I keep thinking the first thing about champagne, he's having friends around and partying. And you've played sports as well, and you know that a nice glass in the middle of anywhere could be good as long as it's with your friends, you know, celebrating something. So for me, champagne, that's the first thing. Having friends around, celebrating something, and then if it happens that you're on a table, then it comes to food pairing. Where I think we have to be careful with fat and sauce and heavy sauces. You know, we're light and a bit acidic, and so we have to be careful about those heavy dishes. You know.
Yeah. So avoid heavy dishes. Something light, like a sashimi
Yeah,
would be perfect. Hey.
Light, dry sushis, fish, chicken. There are many plates. Even strawberries for the pink champagnes, you know, as well, and girls like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So you say partying and enjoying with friends. Little known fact, you also run a club.
Yes, which is closed. It's been closed now for 8 months.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a bit of a shame to have it closed, but yes, it's one of my big selling point as well. You know, where we can sell a few bottles over there.
But it's not a small club either, is it? You say that in the middle of nowhere, but how many? What capacity is it? It's quite large, isn't it?
we feed 1,300 people.
1,300. That's
It's a nice little bar for a countryside, you know.
Yeah, and a great route to market for champagne as well.
Yes, that was part of the deal, or part of the idea, you know, buying a place where you sell many bottles.
Yeah, very good. And I've got to ask, what is your desert island wine? Would it be a bottle of Adissio, or is there something else in the world that you think, yeah, that's what I need to be?
I like wine. I learned a lot in London because I also did the Wine and Spirit Education Trust there.
Okay, yeah.
So I learned a lot. I've got many friends in many places. I think whites. I would take a white.
I mean, it's hot after all, so you want something.
Unless you're allowed 10 cases, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a white wine over a red like Côte du Rhône, or quite heavy red, you know.
Yeah.
That's quite a difficult question, Elliot. Would you take one?
No, I used to avoid the question all the time, but then I thought I can't avoid it anymore.
I like cognac as well, you know.
Well, there we go. That's fair. That's fine. You can take cognac. That's perfect. Anyway, Pierre Eric, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure chatting, and I'm hopefully we'll see you soon in person.
Yeah, we all miss our little trips, you know, and visits and tastings all together. I hope that everything will get much better soon, and I hope to see you again soon, Elliot.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.